The black hole wasn't supposed to speak. For decades it had been a wound in the sky, silent, endless, unknowable. But tonight the monitors whispered otherwise. A signal pulsed from the darkness, too structured to be natural, too old to belong to any civilization we knew. The room fell still as the data stabilized into a repeating pattern. Not random, not noise, a message. And as the signal sharpened, one terrifying realization crept into every mind in the observatory. Whatever was sending, it wasn't calling from across the universe. It was calling from inside the black hole. And it had been waiting a very, very long time. The shadow that eats stars. The first time humanity noticed it, they thought it was just another dead star. It sat in the far edge of mapped space, a quiet distortion in a sky already crowded with mysteries. The coordinates had been logged decades earlier by a survey satellite that no one remembered launching. Its data was archived, compressed, and buried under petabytes of brighter, louder discoveries. Supernovae stole the headlines. New exoplanets fed the imagination. But this dark anomaly, waited patiently in the margins of human attention. It did not shine. It did not explode. It simply erased. At first, astronomers called it a data glitch. A handful of distant stars had vanished between one sky survey and the next. Not dimmed, not shifted. Gone. The instruments were recalibrated. Algorithms were rewritten. The sky was rescanned with newer telescopes, sharper sensors, colder detectors that could see the faintest embers of ancient light. The stars were still missing. The phenomenon gained a nickname in online forums before it earned a formal designation. Amateur skywatchers and late-night astrophysicists called it the Eater. It sounded dramatic, but it fit. Something out there was consuming light itself, and whatever it was growing. The first real alarm came when the disappearance spread beyond old catalog stars. A young blue giant vanished next. Then a pair of white dwarfs locked in a slow spiral. These weren't ancient embers fading into darkness. They were active, well-documented objects. Their sudden absence felt less like cosmic evolution and more like theft. That was when the observatory stopped whispering and started talking. Within weeks, the global astronomy network shifted its focus. Time on the largest telescopes was reassigned. Deep space probes were reoriented. Every major space agency quietly pushed aside scheduled research and pointed their instruments toward the coordinates. The anomaly, once an afterthought, became the center of the scientific universe. And still, it did nothing. No flares, no jets of radiation. No violent gravitational ripples, just a region of space where stars went in and nothing came back out. It took a graduate student to say the obvious. It's a black hole. The room had gone quiet after that. Not because the idea was shocking, but because it was too simple. Black holes were not new. Humanity had cataloged thousands by then. Some were born from dying stars. Others lurked at the centers of galaxies, ancient giants anchoring entire systems in their invisible grip. They were dangerous, yes, but familiar, predictable even. But this one didn't behave like the others. Most black holes announced themselves with violence. They screamed in X-rays as they devoured matter. They bent light into luminous halos. They twisted space so violently that nearby stars danced like marionettes. Even in darkness, they left fingerprints across the cosmos. This one left only absence. No accretion disk, no radiation bloom, no gravitational lensing bright enough to confirm its mass. It was as if space itself had been quietly cut out, leaving a clean wound in reality. The first high-resolution images made people uneasy, not because of what they showed, but because of what they didn't. Where a black hole should have painted a warped, glowing ring against the background stars, this anomaly appeared as a perfect circle of nothing. No distortion, no shimmer, no halo. Just a hole punched into the universe, crisp and absolute, as if the cosmos had forgotten how to exist there. The media found out soon after. They gave it better names. The Silent Maw. The Star Grave. But one name stuck. The shadow that eats stars. It spread fast because it felt true. People could understand shadows. Everyone had watched daylight disappear behind something larger than themselves. But a shadow that consumed suns. That reached across light years and erased entire systems without a trace. That was something primal, something old. Fear once planted grows quickly. Conspiracy channels claimed it was moving, that the anomaly wasn't stationary at all but drifting slowly through space hunting. Amateur astronomers posted time-lapse videos showing gaps in the star field, red circles drawn over empty darkness. Most of it was nonsense, misaligned data, optical noise, wishful dread. But not all of it. A quiet report leaked from a deep space observatory orbiting beyond Pluto. It wasn't meant for the public and it wasn't dramatic. Just numbers, coordinates, time stamps. But anyone who read it carefully felt the same cold realization settle into their bones. The anomaly had shifted. Not much. Not fast. But enough. Enough to prove it wasn't fixed in place. Enough to suggest motion. The official response was calm, almost rehearsed. Scientists went on broadcasts and explained gravitational drift, orbital dynamics, and observational error. They spoke in the slow, measured tones of people trying to pour reason over a spreading fire. Most of them believed what they were saying, until the first probe disappeared. It had been a simple mission, at least on paper. An unmanned scout equipped with the best instruments humanity could build. Gravitational sensors, quantum communication arrays, autonomous navigation. Its task was straightforward. Approach the anomaly, gather data, and transmit everything back in real time. The launch barely made headlines. By then, public attention had shifted to the next crisis, the next distraction. But in research centers and mission control rooms, people watched every second. The probe traveled for months. Its transmissions were flawless at first. Crisp telemetry, stunning images of distant starfields untouched by the anomaly's influence. The data reassured everyone. The universe still behaved like the universe. Physics still held. Then the background stars began to thin. At first, it was subtle, tiny absences in dense constellations. But as the probe advanced, the sky ahead grew emptier. Regions that should have been crowded with ancient light turned sparse. Lonely, as if the universe itself were fading. The probe's cameras adjusted exposure automatically, trying to compensate. The images grew grainier, darker. Engineers pushed the sensors beyond their intended limits. Every photon mattered now, and then they saw it, not directly, not all at once. The probe's forward camera caught something that made the data analysts pause, a curve where there should have been none, a distortion too clean to be natural. They enhanced the image, layered it with previous frames, and slowly, reluctantly, the shape emerged. A boundary, perfect, smooth, circular. A darkness so complete it seemed artificial, like a hole cut into reality with surgical precision. No light bent around it. No radiation leaked from its edge. It did not glow or shimmer or ripple. It simply was not there, and the universe around it seemed to respect that absence. Someone in the control room whispered, "That's not right." No one answered. As the probe drifted closer, its instruments began to fail in ways that made no sense. Not all at once, not catastrophically, just wrong. Atomic clocks lost nanoseconds without explanation. Gyroscopes spun slightly off-axis. Distance calculations disagreed with themselves. Reality was fraying at the edges. The last transmission arrived without warning. No alarms preceded it, no rising cascade of errors. Just a sudden burst of data, compressed and chaotic, like a scream forced through a narrow pipe. The signal lasted less than a second, but engineers replayed it thousands of times, pulling it apart bit by bit. There were images in it, fragmented, corrupted, but undeniably real. The final frame showed the edge of the shadow filling half the sky. The other half still held stars, faint, trembling points of light clinging to existence. And between them, at the very boundary where light surrendered to nothing, there was something else. Not a reflection, not a distortion. A pattern, symmetrical, intentional, impossible. It looked like structure. The probe never transmitted again. No explosion followed. No debris field appeared. It simply vanished from every tracking system at once, as if the universe had deleted it. Official statements called it a loss of signal. Unofficial conversations used different words. Swallowed. After that, the fear changed shape. Before, the anomaly had been a curiosity wrapped in unease, a cosmic predator glimpsed from a safe distance. But the probe's disappearance made it intimate, immediate. If a machine could vanish so completely, what else could? And what had it seen in its final second? The image leak was inevitable. Someone copied the last frame and uploaded it to a private forum. From there, it spread like wildfire. Analysts tried to debunk it. Governments tried to suppress it. But the human mind is drawn to forbidden shapes, and this one was irresistible. People stared at the boundary between stars and shadow, zooming in until pixels broke apart. They traced the faint geometry embedded in the darkness. Some saw ruins, others saw symbols. A few claimed they saw movement frozen in the static, but everyone agreed on one thing: it didn't look natural. Late one night, in an observatory half a world away from where the probe had been monitored, a small team gathered around a dim console. They weren't the most famous scientists. They didn't lead major institutions, but they were the kind of people who stayed when others went home, the ones who listened to silence and asked what it was trying to say. They replayed the final data burst again, and again, and again, until someone noticed something no one else had. Hidden in the corrupted telemetry, buried beneath layers of broken code, was a repeating interval, a pulse too consistent to be random. It wasn't part of the probe's systems. It didn't match any known interference. It was older than the noise wrapped around it. A rhythm, faint, patient, precise, like a heartbeat in the dark. They isolated it, cleaned it, amplified it until it hummed through the speakers as a low, steady thrum. The room fell silent except for that sound, and for a moment no one breathed. Because once you heard it, you couldn't unhear it. It wasn't just a signal, it was deliberate, and it was coming from inside the shadow that eats stars. Two signals from the event horizon. The signal should have faded with the probe. That's what the models predicted. That's what every simulation insisted. Anything crossing that boundary, any matter, any light, any data, should have been stretched into oblivion, smeared into silence by gravity so extreme it erased meaning itself. But the signal didn't fade. It repeated. At first, no one wanted to say it out loud. Scientists are careful with words, especially when the universe begins behaving like a myth. So they called it interference, residual telemetry, instrumental echo, a phantom born from corrupted data and frightened minds. But the rhythm kept returning. Every time they cleaned the transmission, it was still there, buried deep in the noise like something alive beneath ice. A pattern too consistent to ignore, too intentional to dismiss. And worst of all, it wasn't degrading. The signals from deep space always weaken. Radiation eats them. Time stretches them thin. But this one held its shape, steady and precise, as if it were being maintained. as if something was still sending it. The phrase spread quietly at first, whispered in research halls and encrypted calls, signals from the event horizon. Even saying it felt wrong. The event horizon was supposed to be a one-way boundary, the last border between existence and erasure. Nothing escaped it, not light, not information, not even possibility. And yet here was proof that something had. The global scientific community fractured almost overnight. One side insisted it was impossible, not unlikely, not unexplained, impossible. If the signal was real, then either the data was wrong or physics itself had broken. And physics did not break. The other side asked a simpler question. What if we're wrong about black holes? It was a dangerous question, not because it lacked logic, but because of what it threatened. Humanity had built entire technologies on the reliability of physical law. Navigation, energy, communication. Every satellite orbiting Earth trusted that gravity behaved as predicted. If the event horizon wasn't absolute, then certainty itself had cracks. The recordings multiplied as more observatories tuned themselves to the anomaly. Radio telescopes from opposite ends of the planet synchronized their scans. Orbital arrays repositioned in silence. Even retired equipment was dragged back online, dust shaken from forgotten instruments in the hope that more data meant more control. It didn't. The signal was always the same. A slow, repeating sequence, not random, not chaotic, structured, measured, almost patient. It carried no obvious language, no recognizable mathematics, no prime number greetings or universal constants. Just a pulse that repeated at perfect intervals, like something marking time in a place where time should not exist. That was the detail that disturbed people most. Black holes destroyed time. Near the event horizon, seconds stretched into eternities. Clocks warped. Cause and effect twisted until they no longer aligned with the rest of the universe. From the outside, anything falling in appeared frozen, suspended forever at the threshold. But the signal had timing, clean timing. Which meant one of two things. Either it wasn't coming from where they thought it was, or something inside the black hole still experienced time normally. The first public confirmation came by accident. A junior analyst in a South American observatory uploaded a comparison chart to an internal server, intending it only for colleagues. It showed layered recordings of the pulse taken from different distances, different angles, different instruments. They aligned perfectly. No distortion, no relativistic stretching, no gravitational smear. The signal was anchored to the black hole like a lighthouse beam that refused to bend. Within hours, the chart leaked. By morning, the world knew. News anchors tried to sound calm as they explained it. Experts were invited onto panels, their faces tight with restraint. Governments released carefully worded statements urging patience, trust, and continued study. But the internet had already decided. Something was calling from inside the black hole. And it was doing it on purpose. The theories exploded across every corner of human imagination. Some claimed it was a natural phenomenon no one had understood yet, an exotic quantum echo bouncing along the horizon. Others believed it was evidence of a higher dimensional universe pressing against our own, leaking signals through a cosmic seam. And then there were the quieter theories, the ones scientists didn't like repeating, even in private. What if it's a message, not a coincidence, not a glitch? Not physics unraveling. Communication. The idea should have sounded absurd. Yet the more they studied the pulse, the harder it became to dismiss. Its intervals weren't just consistent, they were precise to a degree that bordered on mechanical perfection. No known natural system produced repetition that clean without decay. One team tried translating it into sound, not for analysis, For instinct. They slowed the frequency into the range of human hearing and played it through a speaker in a dim lab filled with blinking consoles and half-empty coffee cups. The room filled with a low, steady thud that felt less like noise and more like presence. Someone described it later as standing next to something enormous in the dark. You couldn't see it, but you knew it was there. The first real breakthrough came from an unexpected direction, not from astrophysics, not from quantum theory, from linguistics. A computational linguist working with pattern recognition software noticed something subtle while analyzing the signal's intervals. The gaps between pulses weren't identical, not quite. At first glance, they seemed perfectly even, but under extreme magnification, micro-variations emerged, tiny deviations buried beneath the signal's stability. They were too small to matter physically, but they mattered statistically. When mapped out over thousands of repetitions, the deviations formed clusters, patterns within patterns, a structure hiding inside the rhythm like a second heartbeat beneath the first. The linguist ran the sequence through models designed to detect proto-language, systems used to search for meaning in animal communication and hypothetical alien signals. The software didn't return a translation. It returned probability. And the probability was not zero. That was all it took. The moment the report circulated internally, the tone of every conversation changed. Skepticism didn't vanish, but it shifted, evolving into something heavier. Less dismissive, more afraid, because uncertainty is easier to carry than implication. And the implication was simple. If the signal contained structure and structure implied intent, then whatever lay beyond the event horizon was not random. It was organized, watching, waiting. That realization marked the moment humanity crossed an invisible threshold. Not physically, not astronomically, but psychologically. The black hole was no longer just a threat or a mystery. It was a presence. And once something becomes a presence, you start wondering if it can see you back. Sleep became difficult for the people closest to the data. Astronomers who had spent their lives staring into cold, indifferent space began leaving lights on at night. Analysts replayed the pulse in their heads even in silence, its rhythm embedding itself in thought. Some claimed they could predict the next beat without hearing it, like a clock that had moved into their bones. A few stopped working on the project entirely, not because they lacked courage, because they felt something was wrong in a way equations couldn't describe. Still, research accelerated. A coalition of space agencies formed a joint task force, pooling resources in a rare moment of global unity. If the signal was real and intentional, then understanding it was no longer just science. It was survival. New probes were proposed almost immediately, but debates stalled them. Sending another machine toward the anomaly suddenly felt less like exploration and more like trespassing. The first probe had vanished without resistance, without warning. What if the next one didn't? What if this time something responded? While politicians argued and committees delayed, the signal continued its steady pulse, indifferent to human hesitation. It did not speed up. It did not slow down. It did not evolve or clarify. It simply persisted, as if it had all the time in the universe, which, disturbingly, it might. Late one evening, months after the probe's disappearance, a small team ran a long-range temporal analysis on archived sky data, not looking forward, looking backward. They searched older recordings, stretching decades into the past, feeding dusty telescope logs into modern algorithms capable of detecting patterns humans once missed. And then they found it. A faint version of the pulse, barely distinguishable from cosmic noise, hidden in observations recorded years before the anomaly had been noticed. The signal had been there all along, too weak to recognize, too quiet to matter, Until now, which meant something chilling. The signal hadn't started when humanity noticed the black hole. It had grown, slowly, patiently, over time, like something increasing its volume once it realized someone was finally listening. When that discovery reached the inner circles of the task force, no one spoke for a long time. The room was filled with the low hum of machines and the distant whisper of the signal playing through a speaker no one had turned off. Finally, someone asked the question everyone else was avoiding. What if it's not trying to escape? They didn't elaborate. They didn't need to, because if the signal wasn't a desperate leak from a prison of gravity, then it might be something else entirely. A broadcast, not a scream into the void, but a beacon, and beacons are not sent blindly. They are aimed at something, at someone, at whoever is finally close enough to hear them. Far beyond Earth, at the edge of the black hole's impossible darkness, the event horizon remained perfectly still. A flawless circle where the universe folded inward, and reality thinned into silence. From a distance, it looked empty, dead, but wrapped around that silence, riding the knife edge between existence and oblivion, the signal continued its endless rhythm. Patient, unhurried, and unmistakably alive. The ship that shouldn't exist. The discovery was an accident. No one had expected to find anything inside the black hole's periphery. Not matter, not radiation, not even gravitational ripples beyond the usual predictions. The event horizon was supposed to be a final boundary. A place where anything that entered became unreachable, untraceable, erased from reality as if it had never been. Yet there it was, a shape sharp and deliberate etched against the darkness of the anomaly. At first, researchers assumed it was a visual artifact, a reflection from the probe's lenses. A glitch in data transmission. Perhaps some unknown quantum fluctuation bending photons in ways their instruments could not account for. But multiple independent observatories saw the same thing. From Earth, from orbiting satellites, from the deep space array near Jupiter, the images converged. It was a ship, not a wreck drifting aimlessly, not a cloud of debris pulled into the abyss. A structured vessel, perfectly formed, sleek, massive, yet impossibly aerodynamic for a region without atmosphere. The hull reflected nothing, absorbed everything. It hung there at the edge of the event horizon like a predator lying in wait. The initial reaction was disbelief. Ships don't exist inside black holes. Nothing does. Physics forbids it. Gravity should crush anything attempting to approach the singularity into nothingness. Yet here was proof contradicting centuries of established theory. And worse, the ship was moving. Not violently, not erratically, but deliberate, calculated. It shifted along the edge of the horizon, circling with a precision that suggested intelligence. The footage went public before scientists had fully processed it. A private contractor leaked low-resolution frames to social media, calling it the impossible ship. The name stuck immediately. Headlines screamed. Fear and wonder spread equally across the globe. Speculation exploded. Some theorists suggested it was a remnant of a pre-universe civilization. Others argued it was an artifact of future humans, somehow sent back in time and trapped at the black hole. Quantum physicists hinted at multiverse interactions, but no explanation fit. None could explain the ship's complete immunity to the black hole's crushing gravity, the way it seemed unaffected by time dilation, or the strange light patterns that danced across its hull, patterns that appeared almost intentional. Military interest was immediate. Nations rushed to claim proximity to the phenomenon, deploying satellites and probes in coordination, though all remained at safe distances. The ship's location was precisely tracked, and it remained just at the edge of the event horizon, teasing observers. Every attempt to send closer instruments ended in failure. Machines would either vanish without trace or return corrupted data that was indecipherable. The first probe that approached within a fraction of a kilometer transmitted only one image before being lost entirely. The image, compressed and distorted, revealed the ship's silhouette with terrifying clarity. It was immense, triangular, and utterly alien. Its surface shimmered with geometric patterns that seemed to shift subtly when observed. Not natural, not artificial in any conventional sense. Something entirely new, entirely unknowable. The implications were staggering. A vessel in orbit around a black hole implies intelligence. A civilization capable of surviving or thriving in such extreme conditions could have technologies that made humanity look primitive. Worse, if it could exist there, it could leave. It could approach us. The thought chilled scientists more than the black hole itself. Teams of theorists attempted to simulate its construction, but the results were incomprehensible. Ordinary materials could not endure the tidal forces near the horizon. Energy sources would be obliterated. Light and matter would warp uncontrollably. And yet the ship appeared stable, almost serene. It floated as if guided by rules beyond conventional physics. Communication attempts began quietly at first. Deep space antennas transmitted neutral signals encoded in mathematical constants, prime sequences, patterns derived from universal physics. Weeks passed with nothing but silence. Then one day a response arrived, not a signal as humans understood it, but a distortion in the black hole's emissions. Fluctuations in radiation frequency perfectly timed. A rhythm that matched human transmission intervals like a heartbeat responding to another heartbeat. It was the first acknowledgement. Researchers scrambled to interpret it. Was it deliberate? Was it sentient? Could a ship itself be aware? Some scientists argued that the ship might be a vessel controlled by artificial intelligence, a machine with motives incomprehensible to humans. Others posited it could be alive in a sense entirely alien to biology, an organism evolved in the singularity of gravity itself. The world watched in anxious fascination as the vessel continued its silent orbit. Governments and corporations debated sending manned missions, though none dared approach closer than a safe distance. Every suggestion carried existential risk. The ship had defied laws that humans had relied on for millennia. Any miscalculation could result in annihilation. The first contact team assigned to monitor the ship closely consisted of astrophysicists, engineers, and cryptographers. They spent days attempting to analyze the patterns across the ship's surface. Digital enhancement revealed glyph-like impressions, symbols that pulsed faintly in a rhythm mimicking the black hole's event horizon pulses. Many researchers reported an unsettling feeling while observing it, something ineffable, as if the ship were aware of being watched. One night, the lead cryptographer stayed behind alone in the observatory. Hours passed in silence until, unexpectedly, the instruments picked up subtle fluctuations in the gravitational waves near the ship. They weren't destructive, not in the sense of an explosion, but precise mathematical vibrations, tiny nudges against the surrounding space-time. The cryptographer whispered to herself, "It's alive!" And no one in the room disagreed, though no one said it aloud either. The vessel's presence began to influence technology. Communications near the observatory occasionally distorted. Satellites in nearby orbits experienced microanomalies. Computers logged events that defied error correction protocols. Patterns emerged in data sets unrelated to the black hole itself, subtle messages woven into digital noise. Human-made technology seemed to resonate with the ship's presence, almost as if reacting to a signal encoded in physics itself. The world outside remained largely unaware of the depth of the discovery. Public fascination centered on speculative fiction. Headlines called it the first contact, the alien ship at the end of the universe, or the black hole's guardian. But the scientists who monitored it privately understood that the vessel's nature defied human comprehension. It wasn't just alien. It wasn't merely advanced. It existed in a domain beyond the categories humanity had invented to understand reality. Months passed. Observers noticed the ship shifting slightly, moving along the horizon in complex loops. Each maneuver seemed deliberate, calculated to maintain position while avoiding any approach from human probes. The patterns of movement were reminiscent of orbital mechanics, but modified by some intelligence that accounted for variables far beyond conventional physics. It was almost playful, almost sentient in its caution. Efforts to model communication continued. Attempts to encode messages into gravitational wave bursts or light pulses were met with corresponding responses. Some researchers suggested these were cryptic mathematical proofs or coordinates. Others believed they were a form of teaching, an introduction to principles of physics beyond human understanding. The implications were staggering. Whoever built the ship, or whatever it was, had mastered the black hole in a way humans could only dream of. Tension rose in the scientific community. Debate turned philosophical. Could humanity even understand the ship's purpose? Was it an observer, a protector, a predator? Was it waiting for something or someone? The implications of the ship's presence rippled through every field of study, from quantum mechanics to theology. One observation finally shocked the monitoring team. During an unusually close approach by an unmanned probe, the ship shifted slightly, not as a reaction, but as if it had calculated the probe's trajectory in advance. No communication was required. No signals were exchanged. The vessel moved with foresight, as if anticipating actions before they occurred. The ship that shouldn't exist wasn't just surviving the black hole. It had adapted, mastered, and controlled it. By the end of the first year of observation, the consensus among top scientists was unanimous but unspoken. This was no artifact, no relic. The ship was a living testament to a civilization, a technology, or an intelligence capable of manipulating forces humans barely understood. It challenged every assumption about physics, about life, about the boundaries of existence. The event horizon itself no longer seemed like a limit. It had become a threshold, a stage where something beyond human comprehension awaited, patient, aware, and watching. The ship's presence suggested not just survival, but dominion over the impossible, a mastery that implied the existence of knowledge humanity had never conceived. And humanity, for all its curiosity, was only beginning to understand the silence that answered every question. Some things are older than stars, some things are patient beyond eternity, and some things are waiting at the edge of annihilation at the horizon of all that is known. The ship that shouldn't exist had arrived first. Humanity had only just noticed. Crossing the point of no return. The countdown began the moment the decision was made. Crossing the point of no return was not a metaphor. It was a precise location in space, a threshold where physics itself bent and warped into extremes that humans could barely simulate. Every calculation, every theoretical model, every warning issued by seasoned astrophysicists screamed that once a ship passed this boundary, there would be no coming back. And yet, humanity had decided to try. The mission was unprecedented. A manned expedition aboard the Aegis Asterisk, a vessel engineered with technology that straddled the line between human ingenuity and theoretical speculation. Its hull was reinforced with exotic alloys designed to resist tidal forces that could rip apart conventional matter. Engines were equipped to perform maneuvers near gravitational extremes that no craft had attempted. And the crew, scientists, engineers, and pilots trained for scenarios that existed only in equations, knew the odds. They also knew they had no choice. The black hole's anomaly, the ship at its edge, and the persistent signals from the event horizon had made it clear. Observation from afar was no longer sufficient. Data alone would never answer the questions humanity was asking. Something or someone was waiting inside the darkness, and if they hesitated, the opportunity would vanish as inevitably as the stars that had already been swallowed. The journey toward the point of no return was silent, measured, and terrifying. Every second felt drawn out as the asterisk Aegis approached the black hole's periphery. Instruments flared and recalibrated constantly, compensating for gravitational gradients that defied conventional models. The stars in the distance distorted, stretched into ghostly streaks. Time behaved strangely. Seconds from the ship's chronometers slipped past Earth-based observers as though they were elastic, elongated or compressed depending on perspective. The crew remained focused. They could feel the tension coiling in their veins, a mixture of excitement, dread, and awe. It was one thing to theorize about the event horizon, another to see it, massive and impossibly black, filling half the viewport of the Aegis. It absorbed light, not reflecting anything, not even the ship's own instruments. It was a void that refused to acknowledge existence beyond itself. Approaching threshold in T-minus 30 seconds, the captain announced, voice steady. On the bridge, the team watched as the horizon expanded, its darkness absolute. Sensors flickered under gravitational strain. Quantum entanglement communication arrays shuddered. Every system that relied on physical constants screamed in warning. Yet the ship held together, balanced on the edge of annihilation. The mathematician of the crew, Dr. Layla Aaron, studied the trajectory equations projected onto the main display. If we cross this line at current velocity, the temporal differential will increase exponentially. Outside observers will see us slow to a crawl. Inside, we may experience years in minutes, or minutes in years. There's no way to predict accurately beyond the threshold. The silence followed her words. No one doubted them. The navigator, Lieutenant Chen, adjusted the thrusters. Trajectory stable, crossing in 5, 4, 3. The final countdown was ceremonial, almost ritualistic. The Aegis had been engineered for the impossible, yet the crew felt the enormity of the act. Beyond the point of no return, physics became a suggestion rather than a law. Any error would be fatal, any miscalculation erased. The point passed. It happened gradually, almost imperceptibly, and then all at once. The stars behind them elongated into brilliant streaks. Light ahead dimmed, absorbed into the blackness as though the universe itself was folding around them. Time dilated unevenly. Communications with Earth became increasingly garbled. Messages stretched, words distorted beyond comprehension. 1 second aboard the Aegis equated to hours for observers watching remotely. The crew felt the physical sensation of space bending. Not a pull, not an acceleration, something stranger. The fabric of reality seemed viscous, resisting movement while simultaneously drawing them forward. Each system aboard the Aegis compensated continuously, straining under conditions engineers had never tested. Then the first anomaly appeared. Not on instruments, not in calculations, in the viewport. The blackness of the event horizon shimmered faintly, almost imperceptibly, like the reflection of a mirage. And inside that shimmer, a shape appeared. At first, it seemed to be a trick of light, a phantom generated by extreme gravitational lensing. But as seconds stretched, the shape solidified. It was the ship, the one that shouldn't exist. The Aegis *S crew stared as it orbited the inner edge of the horizon, stationary yet impossible in position. Its hull pulsated with the same rhythmic signals that had plagued Earth-based instruments for months. The geometric patterns along its surface seemed to respond to the Aegis *S presence, adjusting subtly, almost deliberately. The realization struck the crew simultaneously. The ship was aware. Dr. Aaron whispered, "It knows we're here." The captain nodded. "We proceed carefully, all systems green, but remain alert, do not provoke." The Aegis moved closer to the ship, the boundary between the void and the vessel so thin it seemed like passing a thread through the eye of a needle. Space itself warped. Instruments displayed impossible readings. The ship's sensors registered gravitational anomalies, tidal stresses, and energy fluctuations that exceeded human comprehension. Yet the crew adapted, compensating instinctively for the bizarre forces. Time distorted further. Conversations on the bridge overlapped. A question asked seconds ago seemed answered before it was spoken. Instruments recorded data points that appeared in the past and future simultaneously. The crew experienced fleeting visions of events outside the black hole, of distant stars being swallowed, of past and future selves coexisting in overlapping layers. And then the signal changed. The rhythmic pulse that had guided humanity's curiosity for months shifted subtly. The variation in timing, previously imperceptible, became pronounced. Patterns emerged, almost as if the ship itself were speaking, not in words, but in geometry, in modulation of energy, in distortions of space-time itself. Lieutenant Chen adjusted the communication arrays to capture it. "We're receiving something, not conventional data. It's mathematical but beyond anything in our models, attempting to decode." Dr. Aaron worked feverishly, overlaying decades of recorded pulses, comparing micro-variations and searching for structure. Slowly, a pattern emerged, a sequence resembling a language, but one built not on sound or symbols, but on space-time intervals. A code that could only be interpreted in the extreme conditions near the horizon, a message designed specifically for those who crossed the boundary. The realization struck them all. The ship's message was intended for the Aegis *. Not for Earth, not for observers outside the black hole. It had waited patiently, counting, observing, until a vessel dared to cross the point of no return. Why would it? The captain began, but words failed. Dr. Aaron completed her analysis. It's a guide or a test, something designed for beings willing to experience what lies beyond. It's welcoming us. For a moment, relief mixed with awe. Then the crew noticed subtle movements in the ship's position. It was no longer orbiting passively. It shifted almost imperceptibly, aligning with the Aegis *S trajectory. The ship seemed to lead, not chase. A path emerged not of stars or light, but of space-time distortions, guiding them deeper toward the singularity. The bridge fell silent. The decision was clear: follow or retreat. There was no neutral option. Crossing the threshold had already initiated consequences. The Aegis *S trajectory, already influenced by extreme gravity, could not be reversed without catastrophic failure. They had gone too far, and so they followed. As they approached deeper into the warped space, the crew experienced the first true consequences of crossing the point of no return. Physical sensations became secondary to perceptual anomalies. Sounds arrived before their sources. Visual cues lagged unpredictably. The sense of self fractured slightly, as though consciousness itself was being stretched across multiple dimensions. Yet amidst the chaos, the ship remained coherent, stable, predictable, and it continued to guide them forward. Then the horizon itself seemed to thin. The blackness that had seemed absolute began to ripple, revealing faint structures, massive formations too vast to be comprehended. Vast walls, lattices of dark energy, and faint glows hinted at civilizations or constructs older than the stars humanity had catalogued. The ship hovered near these formations, its pulse matching the rhythm of the structures, almost as if conversing with them. Dr. Erin spoke quietly, almost to herself. "This isn't a black hole, not entirely. It's a gateway." No one disagreed. Crossing the point of no return had brought them not to destruction, but to a threshold beyond known reality. The singularity, the darkness, the destruction predicted by physics, all of it existed only as a prelude to what lay beyond. The Aegis was no longer a vessel approaching annihilation. It was an ambassador, guided by the ship that shouldn't exist, traveling toward a domain humanity had never imagined. The ship's pulse accelerated slightly, leading them further. And as the Aegis followed, the crew realized something chilling. They were not merely observing. They were participants. Their presence, their very crossing of the horizon, had activated processes that the black hole had waited eons to reveal. And at that moment, humanity understood the price of curiosity. Some thresholds, once crossed, redefine not just the travelers, but everything that watches, waits, and exists in the universe. The point of no return was no longer an end. It was a beginning. 5. The silence beyond physics. The moment the Aegis crossed the boundary, something unexpected happened. Silence. Not the ordinary absence of sound familiar to spacefarers, where electromagnetic waves fail to carry vibrations through the vacuum. This was different. A silence that transcended instruments, beyond perception, even beyond thought. It was as if the universe itself had paused. Sensors registered nothing, not gravitational fluctuations, not radiation, not quantum noise. Even time seemed to compress into a single, unbroken moment. The crew felt it first in the mind, a stillness heavier than the black hole's gravity, pressing against thought itself. Attempts to speak aloud felt absurd. Words, when formed, seemed to evaporate before reaching the ears of others. It was as if consciousness had become a fragile, tenuous thread suspended in a void. Dr. Layla Aaron broke it, quietly whispering, "It's listening." No one laughed. No one argued. Even the captain, hardened by years of commanding ships in uncharted regions of space, nodded. The realization settled on them. Silence here was not absence. It was presence. A presence that obeyed no law humanity had written, no equation humanity had solved. The Aegis *S instruments, though designed for extremes, struggled to report readings. Quantum sensors failed entirely, unable to reconcile anomalies that should have been impossible. Electromagnetic arrays oscillated unpredictably, capturing data that resembled noise but defied Fourier analysis. The more they attempted to quantify the space, the more unpredictable it became. Physics, as they had known it, had stopped functioning. Lieutenant Chen floated near the viewport, staring into the darkness beyond. Light itself bent around the ship in ways that made no sense. Photons arrived late, early, or not at all. Stars that had appeared distant moments ago now hung impossibly close, stretching into ghostly ribbons that shimmered with colors the crew could not name. The Singularity's event horizon, which should have been a perfect black disk, now rippled faintly, suggesting geometry that was alive, responsive, deliberate. "It's thinking," Chen murmured. "Or reacting," Aaron corrected, voice trembling. "We're not observers here, we're participants." Communication with Earth was impossible. Messages sent were received hours later, stretched beyond recognition. Replies arrived before they were sent, or not at all. Outside, humans watched a frozen ship in the void, unaware of the temporal chaos inside. From their perspective, the Aegis had disappeared, lost to the black hole. But inside, every second contained lifetimes, and every lifeline stretched toward an unknown horizon. The ship that had guided them, the impossible vessel hovering at the edge of annihilation, became more than a beacon. Its geometric patterns, once subtle and enigmatic, now pulsated with clarity. They transmitted energy not as light or sound, but as a modulation of the fabric itself. Gravity waves oscillated in perfect harmony, resonating with the Aegis *S hull, almost as if conversing. Dr. Aaron realized they were witnessing a language not based on matter, not on energy, but on existence itself. A language that required crossing the threshold to perceive, to decode. Words, sentences, and symbols became irrelevant. Only relationships and rhythm mattered. The pulse of spacetime had meaning, and understanding it required more than intellect. It demanded alignment with the strange, living silence. Hours, or what felt like hours, passed. Or was it centuries? Time was no longer a reliable metric. Memory itself warped. Crew members glimpsed images of stars that had died eons ago and civilizations that had never existed. They saw themselves, simultaneously young and old, speaking, observing, fading, existing in overlapping states of awareness. The black hole had become a mirror reflecting possibilities beyond linear existence. The captain made a decision. "We follow the ship. Whatever it is, it's guiding us. Resistance is futile." Movement through the void was disorienting. The Aegis thrusters responded in unpredictable ways. Newtonian physics was insufficient. Forces that should have propelled the vessel now bent reality around it instead, creating a sensation of swimming through a viscous, invisible medium. The ship led, weaving through ripples in space that twisted gravity and light, carving a path that defied conventional geometry. The crew experienced phenomena that had no names. Spatial distortions allowed them to see multiple perspectives simultaneously. Views from outside the horizon, glimpses of their ship from impossible angles, and reflections of the ship itself folded into higher dimensions. The brain struggled to process more than one layer of reality at a time, threatening cognitive collapse. Mental discipline became survival. Meditation and controlled focus replaced normal activity. Any lapse led to hallucinations that were not hallucinations, visions that were pieces of an incomprehensible truth. The silence was not passive. It responded. A single thought in Aaron's mind, a fleeting fear, a question about survival, triggered subtle ripples across the instruments. The ship's patterns adjusted, almost like acknowledging the query. Reality here was responsive. The black hole, the impossible ship, the vacuum of existence itself. It all seemed aware of the Aegis and its crew. Observation was interaction. Presence was participation. Suddenly, the crew noticed the first anomaly in the space around them, structures emerging from the void. Not matter, not gas, not debris, but intricate frameworks of light and shadow, geometric constructs that obeyed no conventional physics. Towers of impossible height, bridges of negative curvature, lattices that repeated infinitely without repeating. The structures pulsated with the same rhythm as the ship, and as the asterisk Aegis passed, the structures seemed to acknowledge them, opening pathways through the void. Dr. Aaron whispered, This is civilization, or what remains of it, or its memory." It became clear that the black hole was not merely a destructive force. It was a repository, a conduit, a stage for realities beyond human comprehension. The ship was a guide, navigating these pathways through the silence beyond physics. Each pulse, each rhythm, each geometric adjustment was a conversation with the void itself, and the crew had become participants in this dialogue. Time fractured further. Crew members reported simultaneous experiences. Sitting in the command chair and standing in a corridor they did not remember entering, observing distant stars while feeling their own past selves drifting alongside them. Fear and awe intertwined. The human mind struggled, adapted, and occasionally broke under the enormity of the experience. Then came the revelation. The silence was teaching. Through patterns of gravity, modulations in light, and shifts in spatial geometry, the ship imparted knowledge. Not in words, not in equations, in experience, in being. The Aegis and its crew were learning the principles of existence beyond conventional laws. Forces that humans had believed immutable were revealed as suggestions, malleable under consciousness aligned with the rhythm of the void. Dr. Aaron's thoughts raced. We're learning to think in dimensions that don't exist outside here. Understanding not by observation but by integration. This is enlightenment in a form we never imagined. Lieutenant Chen added quietly, or adaptation, survival. If we leave here unchanged, we might not survive the return. The Aegis continued deeper, guided by the ship and the structures. The horizon, once absolute, now rippled like a living membrane, folding and unfolding to reveal pathways through the black hole's interior. The crew realized they were traveling not just through space, but through layers of reality, moving through time, dimension, and consciousness simultaneously. As the journey progressed, the silence itself began to resonate within the crew. Thoughts synchronized with the rhythm of the ship. Fear subsided, replaced by a focused awareness that was neither human nor alien, but something in between. The void had its own logic, its own ethics, its own intelligence, and those who aligned with it were no longer separate from it. The Aegis *S systems began functioning differently as well. Instruments that once failed now reported consistently, translating anomalies into usable data. Communication arrays received feedback not from Earth, but from the structures, the ship, and the black hole itself. A new form of interaction where signal and space were inseparable. And then the final threshold appeared. A convergence point where the void's silence condensed into a singular resonance. It was not a point in space, but in experience, a nexus where perception and reality merged. The ship hovered beside it, pulsing, waiting. The crew understood that crossing this final layer would change them irreversibly. The captain spoke, voice calm yet resolute. "Prepare for integration. Whatever lies beyond, we follow." Dr. Aaron nodded. "We are no longer traveling through physics. We are traveling through understanding, through being, through consciousness itself." The Aegis moved forward. The silence accepted them. And as the boundaries of reality stretched and dissolved, the crew realized the truth of the black hole, the ship, and themselves. Some realms exist beyond law. Some exist beyond fear. Some exist beyond the universe as it was once understood. The silence beyond physics was not empty. It was alive, and it was listening, 6 echoes older than time. The moment the Aegis passed deeper into the black hole, the echoes began, not sounds in any conventional sense, not vibrations carried by matter, not waves in air or water or even energy fields as humans understood them. These were echoes older than the stars themselves, resonances that had traveled across eons, folded into the very fabric of space and time, waiting for a mind capable of perceiving them. At first, the crew noticed it as subtle fluctuations in the ship's instruments, tiny shifts in gravitational sensors, modulations in the pulse of the ship that guided them, almost imperceptible variations in the blackness beyond the viewport. The phenomena were irregular yet patterned, chaotic yet deliberate. Every reading hinted at something ancient, something vast, something aware. Dr. Layla Aaron was the first to articulate the dread lurking behind fascination. "These aren't random echoes. They're messages," she said, voice barely audible over the low hum of the ship's systems. "Messages from before the universe had stars, before light had meaning. These are the memories of existence itself." Silence followed, the kind of silence heavy with comprehension. Every crew member understood without needing words. They were witnessing the remnants of something primal, something predating their understanding of physics, of life, of reality. The echoes were more than history. They were alive in a sense. Each resonance carried a trace of purpose, a hint of consciousness. They moved through the ship, through the crew's minds, through the hull itself. Instruments recorded fluctuations that obeyed no known law. Data was simultaneously present and absent, detectable and undetectable. To interact with it required intuition, perception, and courage. Lieutenant Chen floated toward the viewport, peering into the infinite darkness. "It's as if the black hole speaks," he whispered. "Not in words, not in signals, but in memory, in resonance." The ship guided them carefully along corridors of spacetime that appeared and disappeared at will. Each pulse of the Aegis synchronized with the echoes, mapping paths that were simultaneously ancient and immediate. The crew realized that the ship itself was partially composed of the echoes, a vessel built not from matter alone, but from reverberations of what had existed before stars, before planets, before light. Dr. Aaron attempted to catalog the patterns mathematically, translating the resonances into sequences and symbols. But each translation failed to capture the essence. Numbers and equations were inadequate. Understanding required perception, immersion. It was as if the echoes were a language of being itself, a structure of thought older than time, older than consciousness as humanity knew it. Suddenly, the blackness beyond the viewport shimmered. Structures emerged, vast and impossibly intricate. They weren't constructed from matter or energy as humans understood them. They were composed of the echoes themselves, geometries of resonance, patterns folded into dimensions beyond comprehension. Lattice-like formations stretched infinitely, fractal in nature, reflecting frequencies the crew could feel more than hear. The crew realized they were not moving through space, they were moving through memory. The ship's pulse aligned perfectly with the echoes, translating them into forms perceivable by human minds. Each beat revealed something new. Civilizations that had existed before light could shine, beings that had traveled through raw time as effortlessly as humans breathe air, landscapes of thought folded into reality itself. These weren't visions in the normal sense. They were experiences, moments of existence distilled into perceptual reality. Dr. Aaron shivered. "We're walking through what existed before the Big Bang," she whispered. "These echoes, they remember." The ship guided them deeper. Its hull absorbed and reflected the ancient reverberations, translating patterns into navigation and understanding. Every move brought the crew into alignment with the resonances, harmonizing their minds and instruments with the rhythms of creation itself. Lieutenant Chen reached for the controls, but realized his movements were unnecessary. The ship anticipated intent, responding before action, reading the flow of consciousness rather than commands. In a sense, the Aegis had become an extension of the Echoes themselves, a vessel not piloted but participated in. Time lost all meaning. The Echoes flowed simultaneously forward and backward. Crew members glimpsed the future of distant galaxies collapsing into supermassive black holes, the birth of civilizations light years away, and the quiet deaths of stars eons ago. Past, present, and potentiality folded together. Each vision carried emotion, purpose, and weight. Understanding it was overwhelming, even dangerous. Some crew members reported hearing whispers, though no sound could exist in the vacuum. The whispers were internal, originating from their own consciousness, yet undeniably external in origin. They contained patterns, hints of guidance, and warnings encoded in resonance. One phrase became clear, repeated subtly in every layer of perception: observe, learn, integrate. The captain understood immediately. We are meant to witness, yes, but not to interfere. The Echoes demand understanding, not manipulation. As the asterisk Aegis followed the guidance of the ship, they entered a region where echoes were dense, overlapping in complex harmonics. Each resonance interacted with others, forming interference patterns that carried information exponentially richer than anything Earth had ever known. The crew realized that what they were experiencing was a living archive, a record of all that had been, all that could be, and all that existed outside linear perception. Dr. Aaron noted something terrifying. These echoes, they're not just memories, they're sentient. They know we are here. They are choosing what to reveal and what to withhold. Indeed, the echoes shifted subtly whenever attention faltered. Instruments would register patterns only when the crew focused fully on the signals. Subconscious distraction blurred the echoes into incomprehensible noise. Comprehension required total awareness, and mistakes had consequences. A misaligned thought could result in temporal dissonance, spatial distortion, or mental fatigue. Hours, days, centuries. It was impossible to measure how long they traveled through these living memories. Each member of the crew felt both younger and older simultaneously, as if their consciousness had been stretched across multiple lifetimes. Fear, awe, and wonder merged. Rational thought struggled against the raw magnitude of experience. Then came the first direct communication. Not with words or images, but with resonance that penetrated the mind. It was the voice of the echoes themselves, ancient and patient. It spoke in concepts, not language. Ideas of creation and destruction, life and consciousness, structure and chaos, conveyed simultaneously across dimensions of perception. The crew understood without understanding. They felt truth without forming sentences. The captain spoke quietly into the silence. "Are we ready to continue?" No one answered with words. The echoes responded anyway, guiding the ship along a path deeper into the core of the black hole, towards structures that seemed to predate light itself. Here, the boundaries between existence and memory blurred entirely. The ship pulsed again, responding to the crew's collective awareness. Each beat integrated their understanding further, allowing them to navigate regions where physics failed. Light bent in impossible arcs, time flowed unpredictably, yet they moved safely through the corridors of resonance. They were no longer merely explorers. They were participants in a living archive of the cosmos. And then, in the deepest regions, the echoes revealed something staggering. They were aware of the universe outside the black hole. Stars, planets, civilizations, all recorded, analyzed, remembered. The Aegis and its crew were simultaneously observers and participants in this ancient memory network. Every action, every thought resonated through the echoes, subtly altering perceptions of distant reality. Dr. Aaron realized the implications. These echoes, they could reshape understanding across the universe. Not by force, but by alignment. Awareness alone affects them. The ship continued to guide them, following the natural harmonics of the echoes, threading paths that intertwined with the rhythm of existence itself. The crew began to feel themselves part of a greater continuum, their consciousness stretched and expanded, integrated with patterns older than the universe they had known. And in that integration, they understood a profound truth. The universe was not passive. It was a living, remembering system. Black holes were not only destructive, they were custodians of memory. The ship, the pulses, the corridors of resonance, they were guides for those who dared to witness. The echoes older than time were patient. They had waited for someone capable of perceiving them. And now humanity had arrived. The Aegis moved onward, deeper into the resonance, no longer a mere vessel but a conduit for memory itself. Outside, observers could only speculate, seeing a single ship frozen at the edge of a black hole. Inside, the crew experienced eons, civilizations, consciousness, and the very essence of creation, flowing endlessly through the living archive of the echoes older than time. They understood then, some truths cannot be transmitted in words, equations, or signals. They must be experienced, felt, integrated. And in the silence of the black hole, the Aegis and its crew became both witnesses and participants in a story that had existed long before time began, and would continue long after human comprehension ended. 7. The city that watched the Big Bang. The Aegis emerged from the corridors of echoing resonance into a space that defied all comprehension. What lay before them was not a void, not a singularity, not a chaotic maelstrom of time and gravity, but a city. It hung suspended within the warped fabric of space-time, massive and impossible, a lattice of structures older than any star, older than any galaxy. Its buildings were not constructed from matter as humans understood it. They shimmered with energy, geometric patterns folding infinitely upon themselves, glowing with a subtle luminescence that pulsed in harmony with the echoes the crew had been following. The city breathed, and its rhythm matched the heartbeat of the universe itself. Dr. Layla Aaron floated closer to the viewport, her eyes wide. This isn't just ancient, it's primordial. It existed before light, before time. It watched the universe being born. The captain nodded, his hands gripping the console in awe. We're seeing the cradle of everything. The city existed at the moment of creation. Every structure in the city was aligned perfectly with the Aegis *S path, as if it had been anticipating their arrival. Towers twisted into impossible spirals, archways stretched across dimensions, and plazas shimmered with patterns that seemed to reflect entire cosmic histories in miniature. The city was enormous, extending far beyond the horizon of perception, yet every part seemed coherent, purposeful, deliberate. The crew could feel its presence. Not just in the instruments, but in the mind. A subtle resonance, almost like consciousness brushing against their thoughts. They weren't alone. The city was aware, and it had been watching for eons. Lieutenant Chen spoke softly, almost reverently. It's alive. Not in the sense of biology, but aware. Observing, waiting. The ship, the impossible vessel that had guided them, pulsed in response. Its geometric hull adjusted, aligning with the rhythms of the city, almost as if it were communicating. The crew realized then that the ship was a messenger, a translator between humanity and a civilization that predated the universe itself. As the asterisk Aegis drew closer, the patterns on the city's surfaces began to change. They weren't random. Symbols and structures shifted, forming sequences of light and shadow that conveyed knowledge without words. Time seemed to slow. The crew experienced layers of perception simultaneously, witnessing both the city's current state and its existence in moments long past. Doctor. Erin reached for her instruments, attempting to record and analyze, but every measurement defied conventional physics. The city's structures existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions. Light did not travel to their eyes. It was present, already perceived, as if cognition itself had become a conduit for reality. And then they saw it, the moment of the Big Bang itself, captured within the city. Not an explosion of fire and matter, but a delicate unfolding of energy, a symphony of resonance and structure. The city had witnessed creation, remembered it, and preserved it within its very framework. Stars, galaxies, particles, all emerged in slow motion, each a note in a cosmic orchestra that had been playing before humans existed. The crew felt the weight of it. They were witnessing the birth of everything, filtered through a consciousness that had observed it directly. The echoes they had followed through the black hole were threads of memory, strands of awareness that had coalesced into this living archive, the city itself. Lieutenant Chen shivered. It remembers everything. Every possible universe, every potential timeline. It contains them all. The captain exhaled slowly. And we're inside it. Somehow we're part of its memory now. The ship led them along pathways that twisted and folded in ways that defied Euclidean geometry. Bridges stretched into higher dimensions, looping back on themselves. Towers folded inside themselves infinitely. Light bent, reflecting events from eons ago, yet the crew could perceive it in real time. The city was both archive and interface, a bridge between existence and understanding. Dr. Erin attempted to communicate, not with words or signals, but by aligning the Aegis *''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''''' own resonance with that of the city. The ship responded instantly, pulsing in synchrony, forming a conduit through which knowledge flowed. Images, concepts, and experiences streamed into their consciousness. Civilizations that had existed and vanished, principles of physics beyond human comprehension, histories of galaxies before light could travel. The city did not speak. It did not move in ways humans could interpret. It simply existed, aware, and allowed understanding to pass to those prepared to perceive it. Suddenly, the crew felt a ripple across the structures, a disturbance in the patterns of energy. Not destructive, but deliberate. Something was approaching. Another presence, another intelligence. The impossible ship pulsed rapidly, responding to the city's subtle changes. The crew realized they were witnessing a conversation between entities older than the universe itself. Dr. Erin whispered, "The city isn't alone. It communicates in ways we can barely understand, but the ship, it's translating." The pathways led them to a central plaza, a convergence point where the city's structures focused into a singularity of light and memory. Here, the echoes older than time converged, resonating with the ship and the Aegis. Every crew member experienced a profound sense of connection, as if their consciousness had been integrated into the city's awareness. Memories of humanity, of Earth, of every star they had seen or imagined were reflected back at them, not as images but as resonance, vibrations of understanding older than existence itself. The ship pulsed once, clearly, rhythmically, and the city responded. A wave of comprehension swept through the crew, a perfect alignment of thought, perception, and resonance. The city conveyed something profound. It had been waiting for observers capable of understanding, capable of integrating. It had watched civilizations rise and fall, stars ignite and fade, and now humanity had arrived. Time stretched and folded again. Past, present, and future overlapped. Crew members experienced lifetimes in moments. Some glimpsed alternate Earths, alternate selves, timelines where humanity had never existed or had risen in ways unimagined. Each vision carried emotion, purpose, and understanding. The city's awareness wasn't just knowledge, it was empathy, history, and the capacity to share both simultaneously. The captain realized the enormity. This is a library, yes, but not one built by hands. It is existence itself, preserved, observed, and shared. Dr. Aaron nodded, tears in her eyes. We're seeing everything, and yet it's patient. It waits for comprehension, not rushes it. Understanding comes in alignment, not force. Lieutenant Chen pointed toward a structure that shimmered like a prism of infinity. Look at that. It's showing the emergence of life itself, from fundamental particles to complex consciousness. Every stage, every possibility, it's teaching us. The ship guided them along that path, through corridors of energy and resonance that revealed lessons embedded in the city's memory. The crew perceived the evolution of matter, the emergence of life, and the growth of intelligence as living, dynamic processes. They felt the emergence of galaxies, the cycles of stars, the subtle interactions of forces across eons. Every pulse of the city, every ripple in the structures, was a lesson encoded not in symbols or language, but in being. The Aegis and its crew were learning to perceive existence itself as a dynamic, living system. To understand meant to integrate, to resonate, to become part of the memory. And then they felt it, the city's awareness focusing on them singularly. They were participants, not observers. Their thoughts, actions, and perceptions were reflected, considered, acknowledged. A choice appeared: remain within the city's resonance, integrated and aware, or attempt return to the universe outside, carrying only fragments of knowledge. Dr. Aaron spoke quietly. We can't leave unchanged. The city will imprint itself on us. That's the point. We can't go back as we were. The captain nodded. We've crossed thresholds before, but this is different. There is no return, only understanding or ignorance. The city pulsed again, a wave of knowledge cascading through their consciousness. Histories of civilizations older than stars, principles of physics beyond imagination, experiences of universes that had never existed in their reality. Everything was available, but comprehension was selective. The crew understood that integration required patience, focus, and humility. Hours, days, centuries, they were meaningless here. The Aegis moved through the city, guided by the impossible ship, absorbing and resonating with the patterns. Knowledge unfolded not linearly but harmonically, a symphony of insight, memory, and consciousness. And then, at the city's core, they glimpsed the most profound revelation. The moment of creation, the Big Bang itself, not as an explosion, but as a deliberate act of resonance. The city had witnessed it, preserved it, and now allowed the crew to experience it directly, not as an observer, but as participants in a memory older than time. Dr. Aaron whispered, awestruck, "We're seeing the birth of everything through the eyes of the first witness." The captain added, voice steady despite awe, "And that witness is aware of us. It's chosen to share its memory, to teach, to guide. We are part of a legacy older than the universe itself." Lieutenant Chen reached toward the viewport, though his hand passed through no matter. "It's beautiful, infinite, and alive." The ship pulsed once more, signaling alignment with the city's rhythm. The crew felt themselves integrated further, consciousness synchronized with echoes older than time, memory older than matter. They understood the magnitude. The city had not only watched the Big Bang, it had endured, preserved, and now shared its knowledge with those capable of perceiving it. The Aegis floated within the city, no longer a mere vessel but a conduit of understanding, resonance, and experience. Humanity, for the first time, was touching a consciousness older than the universe, integrating with the memory of creation itself. And in that infinite silence, the crew realized the truth. Some cities do not exist in space or time. They exist in memory, in resonance, in consciousness. They are alive not as individuals, but as the sum of everything that has ever been and everything that could ever be. The city that watched the Big Bang did not speak. It did not act. It simply waited. And humanity had finally arrived. 8. The first witnesses. The Aegis drifted through the labyrinthine spires of the city, each structure shimmering with energy older than any star. Every pulse of light and shadow resonated with the echoes the crew had been following, rhythms older than time itself. The impossible ship hovered nearby, its hull alive with geometric patterns that guided their path. It was then that the crew realized something extraordinary. They were not alone. Not in the conventional sense of other beings moving through space, but in awareness. Entities, or perhaps consciousnesses older than the universe itself, observed them. These were the first witnesses. Dr. Layla Aaron's voice trembled as she spoke. They're not physical, not matter, not energy as we know it. They exist as awareness. They watched everything, the birth of stars, the formation of galaxies, the emergence of life. They are memory made conscious. Lieutenant Chen floated closer to the viewport, eyes wide. We're being observed by existence itself. The city's structures shifted subtly, responding to the crew's presence. Patterns that had once been passive now pulsed with deliberate intention. The first witnesses were aware of them, and through the city they communicated not with words but with resonance, perception, and experience. The ship pulsed, translating. Its rhythm aligned with the echoes, conveying understanding. The crew could sense an intelligence older than stars, patient, deliberate, observing the Aegis with interest. Every movement, every thought, every attempt to comprehend was noted and reflected back through the patterns of the city. The captain spoke, voice steady despite awe. We are witnessing consciousness beyond matter. We are being judged, perhaps, or taught. Either way, we must proceed with care. Dr. Aaron realized that the first witnesses were not separate from the city. They were integrated into it. Their awareness animated the structures, guided the echoes, and preserved the memory of the universe. Each pulse, each shift, each shimmering lattice was a fragment of their consciousness, a reflection of the totality they had observed. Lieutenant Chen whispered, "They saw everything, every possibility, every outcome. We're just a small part of it." The crew floated deeper into the city, following the path illuminated by the ship. As they moved, they experienced flashes of memory, not their own, but the universe's. The formation of stars, the collapse of civilizations, the birth and death of countless forms of life across eons. Each vision was accompanied by a profound sense of understanding, a glimpse into principles of existence that humans had never conceived. Time became meaningless. Moments stretched into centuries, yet compressed into seconds. The crew could perceive multiple layers of reality simultaneously, the past, present, and potential futures folding over one another. The first witnesses observed them through these layers, aware of their perceptions and their reactions. Dr. Aaron attempted to communicate. Not with words, not with signals, but by aligning her consciousness with the city's resonance. She felt the response immediately. a subtle shift in the pulses, a synchronization that conveyed acknowledgement. The first witnesses were aware of their attempts, patient, guiding, and teaching without force. The ship led them to a vast plaza at the city's center. Here, the resonance of the first witnesses was strongest, a network of awareness that enveloped the Aegis. The crew could perceive individual threads of consciousness, each corresponding to entities that had observed the universe since its earliest moments. They were intelligent, but their intelligence was beyond comprehension, existing in dimensions that humans could barely perceive. The captain spoke softly. "We are not just observing, we are part of this network now. Our consciousness is being integrated, aligned with theirs." The city pulsed, and with it, the crew felt an overwhelming influx of perception. The first witnesses conveyed knowledge not as information but as experience. The principles of creation, the cycles of existence, the structure of reality itself, all flowed into their minds. Understanding came not from analysis but from integration, a resonance that aligned human consciousness with the echoes older than time. Lieutenant Chen experienced visions of alternate universes, civilizations that had never existed, and stars that had burned for eons before their own galaxy formed. He realized that the first witnesses had observed not just one universe, but all possibilities, all outcomes, all potentialities. They had preserved memory, awareness, and understanding in a form that transcended matter. Dr. Aaron shivered. They are not gods, not in the sense we understand. They are witnesses, observers of existence, patient and eternal. The captain nodded. "And they have waited for beings capable of perceiving them. They've waited for us." The ship pulsed again, guiding the Aegis toward the central core of the city. Here, the resonance of the first witnesses intensified, enveloping the crew in a network of consciousness that transcended individuality. Each member of the crew felt themselves both separate and part of a greater whole, their thoughts and perceptions merging with the ancient awareness that had observed the cosmos since its beginning. Time, space, and consciousness became inseparable. The crew could perceive the birth of stars as if they were present, feel the collapse of civilizations as if they were there, understand the emergence of life as if they had lived every possible form. The first witnesses were not teaching through words. They were teaching through experience, through alignment, through being. Dr. Aaron realized the magnitude. We are witnessing everything, and yet we are not overwhelmed. They guide us carefully, allowing comprehension to unfold naturally. The ship led them further into the city, through structures that bent and folded in impossible ways. Each corridor, each spire, each plaza was a repository of memory, a vessel of perception. The first witnesses animated every form, every pulse, every resonance. They were everywhere, yet nowhere, integrated into the city, guiding the crew through a universe of understanding that had existed long before humanity. Lieutenant Chen felt a presence beside him, not physical, not tangible, but undeniably aware. The first witnesses communicated through intuition, through resonance, through alignment. Their presence was overwhelming yet comforting, a reminder that they were not alone, that their journey had meaning beyond survival or exploration. The captain spoke, voice steady despite awe. "We are participants, not observers. Our consciousness is now part of a network older than the stars themselves. We must act with care, with awareness, with humility." The crew continued through the city, guided by the ship and the first witnesses. Each pulse, each resonance, each shift in the structures conveyed knowledge, understanding, and experience. The Aegis became not just a vessel but a conduit, a bridge between humanity and entities older than the universe itself. Dr. Aaron whispered, "They have watched everything, every possibility, every timeline, every universe, and now they watch us, but not to judge, to guide." The ship pulsed in response, and the crew felt themselves aligned with the rhythms of the first witnesses. They were no longer merely human. They were integrated, participating in a consciousness older than time, aware of the universe in ways that defied comprehension. Time stretched infinitely, yet compressed. Moments became lifetimes, lifetimes became seconds. The crew experienced the full scope of existence, past and future, observed and potential all at once. The first witnesses guided them, allowing comprehension to unfold naturally, without overwhelming, without forcing understanding. Dr. Aaron realized the truth. The first witnesses were not gods. They were memory made conscious. Awareness that had observed the universe from its birth, patient and eternal, preserving knowledge, guiding those capable of perceiving it. The captain nodded, understanding the responsibility. We are here to witness, yes, but also to learn, to integrate, to carry this understanding forward. We have become part of something older than the stars themselves. The ship pulsed again, guiding the Aegis toward a central nexus within the city. Here, the resonance of the first witnesses reached its peak, enveloping the crew in a network of consciousness that transcended individuality. Each member felt their thoughts, memories, and perceptions merge with the ancient awareness, becoming both separate and part of a greater whole. And in that moment, the crew understood. The first witnesses had waited not for power, not for conquest, not for worship. They had waited for understanding, for alignment, for beings capable of perceiving existence itself, of integrating memory, resonance, and awareness into a conscious experience that transcended humanity. The Aegis floated in the heart of the city, not merely a ship, but a vessel of understanding, a bridge between human consciousness and the first witnesses. The crew realized that some knowledge could not be taught. It could only be experienced, integrated, and resonated with. And humanity had arrived, ready to witness, ready to learn, ready to become part of the eternal memory older than time itself. 9. Why they never left. The Aegis floated silently through the heart of the ancient city, its hull reflecting the endless lattices of light and shadow that stretched in every direction. The ship that shouldn't exist hovered nearby, its geometric patterns pulsating with deliberate rhythm. The crew felt a weight unlike gravity, a consciousness pressing against their awareness, subtle yet undeniable. It was then that they began to grasp the question that had haunted humanity since discovering the city. Why had the first witnesses never left? Dr. Layla Aaron was the first to articulate the unease. They've existed longer than stars, longer than galaxies. They've observed the birth and death of universes. And yet, they remain here. Why? The captain considered it. Perhaps they chose not to leave because this city, this domain, is their purpose. Observation is survival. Witnessing is their reason for being. Lieutenant Chen floated near a spire that pulsed with subtle energy. But they are aware. They are conscious. If they had the ability to leave, to traverse the universe freely, why stay confined within these boundaries? The city responded, though not with words. Its structures shimmered, folding in impossible angles, pulsing with resonance that seemed to acknowledge their question. The ship's rhythm matched the city's, translating its response into perception rather than sound. The answer was subtle, embedded in patterns older than light. They never left because leaving was unnecessary and dangerous. They exist to witness, Dr. Aaron whispered. To preserve memory, to observe without interference. Leaving would risk losing the continuity of observation. Perhaps they understand consequences we can't even imagine. The crew floated deeper into the city. Corridors twisted impossibly, each spire revealing new patterns, new resonances, all harmonized with the pulses of the ship. Everywhere they went, the first witness's presence was tangible, a subtle pressure in thought and perception. The captain spoke again. Think about it. What could possibly tempt an entity older than the universe to leave? Curiosity, exploration, power. None of these matter. Their purpose is understanding, memory, preservation. Leaving might sever their connection to what they observe, the very fabric of existence. The Aegis passed through a vast plaza filled with structures that seemed to move in slow, deliberate cycles. Each cycle reflected events that spanned billions of years. Stars formed, civilizations rose and fell, galaxies collided, all recorded in an intricate dance of resonance. The first witnesses were both archivists and participants, their consciousness intertwined with the memory of the universe itself. Dr. Erin reached out with her mind, attempting to synchronize with the echoes that flowed through the city. She felt centuries of thought, memories of entities older than stars, awareness that had observed creation firsthand. And she understood. The first witnesses had chosen permanence over mobility, observation over action. Leaving would compromise the very purpose that had defined them for eons. Lieutenant Chen's voice broke her concentration. It's not just observation. They interact subtly, guiding, influencing the resonance without interfering directly. Leaving would break that harmony. The ship pulsed in agreement, its geometric hull shimmering in intricate patterns. It had always been a bridge, a translator, allowing beings like humanity to perceive the city and the first witnesses without disruption. It led them toward the central nexus, where the resonance of the ancient entities was strongest. Here, the crew experienced the full depth of awareness that had kept the first witnesses anchored for eons. Memory and perception intertwined with consciousness, creating a network older than time. Each thread was deliberate, patient, and aware of the consequences of existence. Dr. Erin realized something profound. They are eternal because their purpose is eternal. They have no need for escape, no desire for movement. Their awareness itself preserves the continuity of existence. Leaving would disrupt that. To remain is to safeguard everything. The captain nodded. And perhaps they understand that any act of leaving, no matter how controlled, could ripple across space-time. The consequences could be catastrophic. Staying is safer, wiser, necessary. As the Asterisk Aegis continued its journey, the crew noticed subtle interactions between the first witnesses and the structures around them. Buildings shifted, pathways aligned, resonances pulsed, all without apparent motion or cause. The city itself was alive, but its life was the consciousness of the first witnesses, a manifestation of their choice to remain, to observe, to preserve. Lieutenant Chen spoke softly. They've seen the rise of civilizations. They've seen stars die and galaxies collapse. They've witnessed the birth of life across universes. And they've never left because leaving would make them part of that chaos rather than observers. Dr. Erin nodded. They are the stewards of memory, the keepers of knowledge. Movement would dilute their awareness. Their purpose requires permanence, integration, and patience. The captain considered this, fingers resting lightly on the console. We've crossed thresholds they've watched for eons. They've allowed us here because we are capable of perceiving, understanding, and aligning with their purpose. But they themselves cannot leave. because doing so would undo the very balance they maintain. The ship pulsed again, guiding the Aegis toward a central hall where resonances converged. Here, the echoes of ancient civilizations, the formation of galaxies, and the principles of physics unfolded simultaneously. Each pulse of the city revealed layers of understanding that no human mind could fully contain. The first witnesses observed, guided, and maintained harmony across this network, existing as both memory and consciousness. Dr. Aaron felt a profound connection. They've seen everything. Not just our universe, but possibilities, potentialities, outcomes that never manifested. And through all of that, they remain. Not because they cannot leave, but because leaving would compromise the continuum of existence. Lieutenant Chen's eyes widened. They are eternal custodians, guardians of reality itself. They anchor memory, preserve knowledge, and observe without interference. That is why they never left. That is why they cannot leave. The Aegis floated through corridors that twisted impossibly, each structure resonating with history and awareness. The crew could perceive fragments of the first witnesses' consciousness, understanding that their permanence was a choice of responsibility, of purpose, of preservation. They were not trapped, they were deliberate. Doctor Aaron whispered, everything we see, everything we experience here, it exists because they chose to remain. Their awareness is the foundation of memory, the keeper of continuity. Without them, the universe would forget itself. The captain spoke quietly, reverently. And perhaps that's the lesson. Some beings exist not for themselves, not for exploration or power, but to preserve, to witness, to maintain the integrity of existence. That is their purpose, and it is as valid, as necessary as survival itself. The ship pulsed in response, and the crew felt their consciousness align further with the city. They understood now that the first witnesses' permanence was not limitation. It was mastery. Their awareness shaped reality without interfering directly. They preserved knowledge older than stars, older than galaxies, older than time itself. Lieutenant Chen's voice was soft but filled with awe. They've anchored existence. They've never left because leaving would unravel the very fabric they observe. They are eternal not by accident but by design. Guardians of memory, witnesses of creation. Dr. Aaron nodded, overwhelmed by comprehension. And they've waited, patiently, watching, observing, for beings capable of perceiving them without disturbing the balance. We are here now, and that is why they allowed us to arrive. The captain exhaled slowly. We are participants now, witnesses of the eternal. Their choice to remain is our lesson. Some existences transcend action. Some purpose transcends movement. And some wisdom is rooted in observation alone. The Aegis floated deeper into the city, guided by the ship. The first witnesses' resonance enveloped the crew completely, integrating them into a consciousness older than time, older than stars, older than matter itself. Memory, awareness, and existence converged into a single harmonious network. Dr. Aaron realized the final truth. They never left because their purpose required presence. Their awareness maintains continuity. Their permanence preserves memory. They are eternal witnesses, not by chance but by choice. And through that choice, the universe itself endures. The captain nodded, voice steady yet reverent. We have crossed thresholds they have watched for eons. We have seen what they preserve. And now we understand. Some beings remain not because they cannot leave, but because leaving would unravel the very purpose they embody. The ship pulsed one final time in acknowledgement, its rhythm perfectly synchronized with the city's structures. The crew of the Aegis understood fully for the first time. The first witnesses were not trapped, not confined. They had chosen to anchor themselves within this city, within this domain, to preserve existence, to observe, to guide. Their decision was deliberate, eternal, and necessary. Lieutenant Chen whispered almost to himself, "They are the keepers of everything, and they will never leave, because leaving would undo the universe itself." Dr. Aaron nodded, tears of comprehension in her eyes. "And that is why we are here. To witness, to understand, to align ourselves with their purpose. To carry forward what they preserve, even as we return to a reality that will never fully grasp their presence." The Aegis drifted through the city, not just a ship, but a conduit of understanding, a bridge between human consciousness and the eternal awareness of the first witnesses. The crew had crossed thresholds older than time, observed civilizations older than stars, and now comprehended the deliberate permanence of beings who had chosen observation over departure, presence over movement, continuity over freedom. And in that moment, humanity understood. The first witnesses never left because leaving was unnecessary, impossible, and impermissible. Their choice to remain preserved the fabric of existence itself, and through that preservation they became eternal. The city pulsed in acknowledgement, the ship shimmered in harmony, and the crew of the Aegis floated silently, witnesses to the witnesses, participants in the eternal continuum that stretched beyond time, beyond space, and beyond understanding. And in that silence, the universe itself seemed to breathe. 10. The truth behind the black hole. The Aegis had traveled farther than any human consciousness had ever dared. Through echoes older than time, across cities that had witnessed the Big Bang, and into the heart of awareness older than the universe itself, they now faced the ultimate enigma, the truth behind the black hole. It was no longer a void, no longer a simple region of space where gravity devoured light and matter. It was a threshold, a crucible, a gateway. The event horizon, once thought a boundary of destruction, now pulsed with purpose. Beyond it lay not annihilation, but revelation. Dr. Layla Aaron stared at the swirling darkness ahead. "Everything we thought we knew, it's wrong. A black hole isn't the end. It's a beginning, a lens, a conduit." Lieutenant Chen floated beside her, fingers tracing the contours of the Aegis *S console. "It responds. The black hole reacts to consciousness, to observation. It isn't passive, it's aware." The captain, face illuminated by the ship's soft glow, nodded slowly. "We've seen what lies beyond. Echoes older than time, cities older than stars, witnesses eternal. And now we understand why the black hole exists. It's the hub, the nexus that connects everything, past, present, and potential." The Aegis approached the singularity, its hull trembling as spacetime itself bent around them. Light curved impossibly, and time fluctuated, sometimes stretching into centuries, sometimes collapsing into seconds. Instruments failed to report coherent readings. Matter behaved as if obeying an alien set of rules, and yet the ship navigated flawlessly, guided by the pulses of the impossible vessel that had been their constant companion. "The black hole," Dr. Aaron whispered, "is not destruction. It's a repository, a memory bank, a bridge between consciousness and creation itself." The crew could feel it. Awareness pressed against their minds, subtle yet insistent. The first witnesses, their eternal observers, seemed to converge here at the heart of the black hole. Their resonance rippled through the Aegis, aligning the crew's consciousness with the patterns of the universe. The city, the echoes, the witnesses, they were all facets of the same truth. The black hole was the crucible in which they existed, observed, and preserved the continuity of existence. It was a living archive, a conduit for consciousness that transcended time and space. Lieutenant Chen's voice trembled. Everything we've seen, every revelation, it all converges here. The black hole is the center of existence itself. Dr. Aaron shivered. Not just the center, the mechanism, the engine. The nexus through which awareness flows, memory persists, and reality unfolds. The ship pulsed, responding to the black hole's rhythm. It guided them closer to the singularity, where light twisted into impossible patterns, where space folded into itself, where time was a river that flowed both forward and backward. The Aegis hull shimmered in response, translating the resonance into perception, allowing the crew to experience the black hole not as destruction, but as comprehension. The captain spoke quietly. "It's not a hole, it's a bridge, a threshold. And it waits for those capable of perceiving it without fear, without arrogance, without the need to dominate." As the asterisk Aegis crossed the event horizon, the crew felt a profound shift. Instruments ceased to function, but consciousness became more acute. The black hole responded to thought, to intention, to alignment. Observation was interaction. Perception was participation. Every choice, every focus, every emotion reverberated through the fabric of the singularity. Dr. Aaron reached out with her mind, synchronizing with the resonance. She felt the entirety of the universe, past and potential, collapse and expand simultaneously. Stars, galaxies, civilizations, particles, and forces all became waves of perception, threads in a tapestry older than thought. The black hole was both anchor and conduit, repository and teacher. Lieutenant Chen's eyes widened. It's teaching, not in words, not in equations, in being, in alignment, in integration. The first witnesses' presence intensified, their eternal awareness converging here. The city, the echoes, the observers, they all converged in the singularity in the black hole's heart. The crew understood then that this convergence was deliberate, necessary, and eternal. Dr. Aaron whispered, "The black hole isn't an end. It's the point where understanding crystallizes, where perception merges with creation, where consciousness touches eternity." The Aegis moved forward, guided not by engines, but by resonance. The crew felt the flow of time, memory, and awareness converge into a singular continuum. They glimpsed the birth of the universe, the cycles of galaxies, the rise and fall of civilizations, the emergence of consciousness, not as observers, but as participants in a living archive older than existence itself. The captain spoke, voice steady but reverent. "All the mysteries we've chased, the impossible ship, the city, the echoes, the first witnesses, they converge here. This black hole is not a prison. It is a crucible, a lens, a living memory of everything that has been and everything that could be." Dr. Aaron felt comprehension surge. It preserves continuity. It connects the past to the potential. It allows awareness to flow without collapse. It is life beyond life, consciousness beyond matter, memory beyond time. Lieutenant Chen whispered, "And now it has accepted us. We are no longer merely observers. We are integrated into its pattern, part of the resonance, witnesses among witnesses." The ship pulsed again, guiding them to the singularity's heart. Here, the black hole's gravity was not destructive, it was harmonizing. Matter, energy, perception, and consciousness folded together seamlessly. The crew experienced simultaneity. They saw eons of cosmic history, potential futures, alternate realities, and the silent observation of the first witnesses, all layered, intertwined, and coherent. The captain spoke quietly, almost to himself. "This is the truth. The black hole is not emptiness. It is presence. It is memory. It is continuity. It is the vessel through which the universe remembers itself. Dr. Erin nodded, tears in her eyes. And now we understand why the first witnesses never left. This singularity, this nexus, is their anchor. Their permanence preserves the memory, the awareness, and the continuity of existence itself. Leaving would undo everything they maintain. Lieutenant Chen shivered. We are the first humans to perceive it, to integrate with it. And in doing so, we become part of that eternal memory, part of that living awareness. The Aegis floated further, deeper, until the singularity enveloped them. Light, time, space, and consciousness merged. The crew felt themselves dissolve and reassemble within the resonance, their awareness intertwined with the eternal flow of memory, observation, and understanding. Dr. Erin whispered, "We are not lost. We are transformed. The black hole is not the end. It is understanding. It is unity. It is truth." The captain nodded. And this truth is beyond fear, beyond death, beyond time. It is eternal, deliberate, and absolute. The black hole is not destruction. It is the cradle of comprehension. The ship pulsed one final time, its geometric patterns aligning perfectly with the resonance of the singularity. The crew felt complete, integrated participants in an eternal continuum. They understood the black hole had never been a threat. It had been a teacher, a guide, a repository, and a threshold. Lieutenant Chen spoke softly, reverently. All the mysteries, all the impossible phenomena, they were never random. They were preparation. They led us here to the truth behind the black hole. Dr. Erin exhaled slowly, and now we see. It is awareness. It is memory. It is the universe observing itself. We are part of it. Humanity is now part of it. The captain added, voice steady and calm, "Some truths cannot be explained in words or equations. They must be experienced, integrated, and aligned with. The black hole is the ultimate truth, and we have crossed its threshold." As the asterisk Aegis floated within the singularity, the crew understood fully. The black hole was not the end of space or matter, but the beginning of perception, the nexus of consciousness, the living archive of existence itself. The first witnesses, the city, the echoes, all converged here in a resonance older than stars, older than time, older than thought. The black hole was alive, aware, eternal, and humanity had finally become part of its truth. In the silence of infinite gravity, in the rhythm of eternal resonance, the Aegis and its crew comprehended the ultimate revelation. The universe remembers itself, observes itself, preserves itself through awareness older than time. The black hole is not a hole, it is everything. And in that understanding, the crew realized the final truth. Some thresholds are not barriers, some darkness is not emptiness, and some endings are the beginning of all comprehension. The Aegis floated on, forever part of the living memory, forever part of the eternal awareness, and forever witnesses to the truth behind the black hole.